everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Wisconsin Weather Experts on this Wednesday. The sun is still shining, thankfully.
So nice out there.
It is beautiful.
But it is a very different day today than it was yesterday.
Yes.
Yesterday's high happened at like midnight or shortly after, and it was in the 70s, and then this morning we woke up in the 30s.
Yeah.
So yeah, Mother Nature is still reminding us that we do indeed live in Wisconsin, and we've got an update on some of our big picture stuff in just a little bit here. But of course, we want to keep looking back a little bit because this week started out incredibly stormy in parts of the state.
It did. In fact, we've recorded now our first tornadoes of the year, not here locally, but across northern portions and western portions of Wisconsin. Think back from Monday. This was from that evening batch of thunderstorms Monday in western and northern Wisconsin. So now 6 confirmed tornadoes, 3 of which in far southeastern Eau Claire County, 1 in far northeastern Buffalo County, but then that did move into Eau Claire County. And then 2 from Shawano County, so that would be the National Weather Service in Green Bay. They were also out surveying yesterday, all of which were either EF0s or EF1s. What that does still mean in a lot of spots, winds were over 100 miles per hour. And even though we think those are the smaller, and they are technically the smaller tornadoes, they did still produce some damage. But first tornadoes of the year. Lower
end of the scale, the EF, if you're not familiar, enhanced Fujita scale, right? Runs from EF0 all the way up to EF5. But we don't necessarily see the top end very often.
Right.
Particularly here, but even throughout the country, very few, it's pretty rare to get above an EF3,
right.
Even in the southern states and in the heart of Tornado Alley. So for us to get 3 EF1s at this point in the severe weather season is a notable outbreak, so that forecast that we talked about on Monday being so hit or miss definitely hit hard in the north.
Yeah, and that was really interesting too to go back and look at the line, because between those 2 separate areas of tornado reports, it was within the same line, but almost in a way, the tornado damage from Shawano County, that was almost an offshoot of the cell that moved through Eau Claire County. So all related in some way. And again, thanks to that cold front that made its way through.
Right. I remember when we were watching this happen live, I was starting to wonder whether that was all one long track tornado.
Right.
Or as it turned out to be 3 or 4 different reports of different situations and different spin-ups, or potentially a spin-up that then retracted and spun up again farther down the road.
Which does happen quite often.
Yeah, fascinating and quite the, really jump start to the severe weather season. In fact, we have video here. This is from Augusta, Wisconsin, part of that Monday outbreak there. Take a look at this from Carson A. He took this just southeast of Augusta, Wisconsin. That's near Eau Claire, if you're not familiar with it. That was where the tornado warning was and where the tornado was on Monday, April 28th, around 8 p.m. You can see what we call tornado genesis, which I'm sure if you break that down, you figured it out. It's the genesis, the beginning of the formation of a tornado. You see it happening right in front of your eyes there on that video. National Weather Service said that they were at least 3 EF1s, and I believe that ended up being the official total there, 3 EF1s in Eau Claire County. The tornado in this video did eventually become one of those EF1 rated tornadoes.
We don't often get to see the start and the somewhat finish of a tornado, so that is pretty fascinating. I'm very thankful to that viewer who is allowing us to show that.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to watch, and in that video you can't quite see the ground there, you see the treetops, but in other videos that you've probably seen online, sometimes the funnel descends completely from the cloud, sometimes it descends from the cloud and then rises up from the surface and the 2 join in the middle. It's fascinating to see how these rotating columns of air can develop in so many different ways and yet end up being the exact same
thing. And just
the
debris that it picks up, we can't really see that here locally, but when you think of those big Tornado Alley type tornadoes, just to see all of the debris that they pick up is just incredible. The
wedge type storms for sure.
Yeah.
Happily, nothing like that in our immediate future, but we do get a little soggy, so let's take a look at our big picture here.
Yeah, let's dive in. Here's a look at our national view right now. And now, speaking of severe weather, there is still some ongoing down towards the south. It's a bit unsettled. We have a couple of different low pressure systems across mainly the central U.S. right now. The strongest by far, though, is down towards the south across Oklahoma as well as Texas. there are severe thunderstorm warnings. There have been a handful of tornado warnings, and then most notably, plenty of flash flood warnings and flood headlines down towards the south within this cluster of storms. As we zoom in a little bit more, all these green boxes are actually flash flood warnings because this isn't moving very fast, and it's already dropped a couple inches worth of rain in some of these areas, and more, of course, falling as we speak. So flooding really going to be huge with this as it continues to slowly make its way eastward. On this map, all the reds here, you can see our flash flood warnings, but then all the greens, still flood watches and flood warnings for flooding in those low-lying areas that are prone to seeing some of that water piling up. So that's where the activity is today. Yes, we have rain on the way for southeast Wisconsin, not until later tonight, but nothing as compared to what some spots saw Monday here across Wisconsin and what right now areas towards the south are seeing. In fact, even from the Storm Prediction Center, that severe threat for today way towards the south of us. There is a little area in southern Illinois and Indiana under that slight risk. You can see right where that cluster of storms is right now. That's really the main area for a severe threat going forward today. Let's bring you closer to home. This is what we are watching in the near term for those of us in Wisconsin. We have an area of rain from Iowa into Illinois. And although it looks like it's knocking on our doorstep, we still have sunshine here in southern Wisconsin. So we're still just a bit too dry. Most of our rain chance for today will hold off until later on this evening, if not until later tonight. But we do, again, have that rain chance returning by later this Wednesday evening. Let's take a statewide view here and go through the rest of the day today. Notice how some of that area of rain right now in Illinois really struggles to hold together and may completely fizzle out as it reaches Wisconsin. Sky vision isn't really showing the rain for later this evening, but we do have the chance for at least a few scattered showers. One thing is for certain, the steadiest rain is expected after midnight and to continue through at least midday on Thursday. This is right around our commute time, getting those kiddos to the bus stop or to school, maybe shortly after. It's going to be a rainy Thursday morning, maybe a little bit of a dry break, but still some scattered showers expected then throughout the second half of Thursday in eastern Wisconsin, not just those of us towards the south. Also notice out west Thursday evening, there could be a few more showers and rumbles of thunder. We'll be watching that because if it holds together, it may bring in a few showers late Thursday night or Friday morning to eastern parts of the state, particularly here in southeastern Wisconsin. Just a slight chance at this point for that. And then also Friday evening, we'll see another area of rain developing in Iowa, and that could then clip maybe the Wisconsin-Illinois border later Friday evening and overnight before we dry out and see a beautiful sunny weekend across the state of Wisconsin. We are looking really, really good, and that may actually linger into next week too, and I'll explain why in just a second. But let's talk temperatures. It is already a cooler day compared to yesterday. Inland areas, depending on how quick we see those thicker clouds build in, may still climb well into the 60s. So still a pretty pleasant day today. And that's the same story for the rest of the state. I mean, Madison over to Eau Claire, La Crosse, everybody expecting to see at least some 60s. The question mark is really just those lakeshore spots because we will have a prevalent east-northeasterly breeze, and that'll likely keep most spots in the low 50s, maybe mid 50s for today. But even though we drop, heading into tomorrow with some rain chances and into Friday, look at what happens past that. We get into the weekend, especially the second half of the weekend, and we see some of those warmer temperatures returning, and they stick around potentially on into next week. We may start to drop just a little bit maybe towards the end of next week, but indications are there for maybe some consistent sunshine and some consistent warmth, so something to look forward to. And that in part, and I think we'll talk a lot more about this later in the week and into early next week, we have the potential to see a blocking pattern, and we've seen this every so often, an omega block, which means a high pressure system sitting in our area because it's sandwiched in between two other low pressure systems, and that then could just mean a nice stretch of some sunshine and warm temperatures, seasonably warm temperatures at that. So something to look forward to. Again, we still have to see that coming together. It's, ways away for now, but that could bring us, Rob, a good stretch of sunshine.
It really could. The first full week of May might feel more like a mid-June or late June kind of stretch there, depending where that block sets up.
Exactly.
Because, it's a block. things don't really change. So what you get on day one of the blocking pattern is what you get until the pattern breaks
Right.
down. So as long as we're on the sunny, warm side of it, we'll be like, hold in there, Mega
Exactly.
Block.
Don't
Stick with us.
move.
We could really use that. And it'll be peaceful, which is nice. Of course, we have not had a lot of peace. It is severe weather season across the country. I want to take you now to where a derecho, winds topped 80 miles an hour. Very strong line of storms, often referred to as a derecho, ruled right across Pennsylvania. So this is what it looked like in State College, PA, home to Penn State, of course. At least 2 people are unfortunately dead in Pittsburgh from falling trees as a result of this storm. Nearly 450,000 customers in Pennsylvania were without power at one point. It might be until the weekend, they said, before they get things up and running. A derecho, of course, a different type of more widespread severe weather, more organized cluster, and it could really just take out huge swaths of land, essentially, of housing, of whatever may be in its way. More of a large-scale event there. Now, as we go to Texas, speaking of large scale, yeah, that's a lot of hail.
Wow.
It's not snowing in Texas, so this happens to be Guthrie, Texas. Some significant amounts of hail there. There were other reports in parts of Texas, particularly into the Panhandle, of very large hail, 4 3/4 inch hail. They were calling it DVD-sized hail,
Oh
which
my
I think is
goodness.
a funny measurement, but larger than softball-sized hail. This obviously is not that in size, but it's definitely quite a bit in numbers. Look at all that hail. It looks like it ought to bring the snowplows.
You know when it starts bouncing, too, that it's a decent size.
Right, and you just hear that pelting out.
Yeah.
Some sort of metal, like some poor guy's hood or rooftop is going to be in bad shape. All right, one more stop here. We go to Springfield, Missouri. You can see that they had some very strong thunderstorms. In fact, one thunderstorm was estimated to have a 91-mile-per-hour wind gust.
Wow.
Springfield, Missouri, seeing some incredible damage there. Look at these still pictures from that town. Thank you to Amy Myers for that. We appreciate the pics. And it's a really good way to end this because we talked about 3 essentially very different ways to do a lot of damage with Mother Nature this time of year. Obviously, we started with the half-dozen tornadoes here in Wisconsin, then the derecho, and straight line winds. These are just straight line thunderstorm-based winds at 91 miles per hour. And look at the size of that, what appears to be healthy tree.
Yeah.
Just taken up by the root, it looks like.
And let's compare that 91-mile-per-hour straight-line wind to an EF0 or an EF1.
Right.
It's not too far, which is why we take straight line wind damage and squall lines just as seriously really as a tornado threat, because some of the winds within some of those EF0s and EF1s were around or just over 100 miles per hour.
Right.
That's not too different than 91. So both really valid threats for parts of the U.S. at
Sometimes
times.
because we're all fascinated with the phenomenon of tornadoes, they tend to steal the headlines, but strong straight line winds or these, complexes of thunderstorms like a derecho can be even more damaging in some cases. So great pictures, great video. We appreciate all of the contributors for that. We have more Wisconsin weather experts coming up in just a bit. We're going to talk snow. Oh, don't worry. It's the end of snow season.
I
Tom's
put my
gonna talk
shovel
about
away.
that.
Welcome back, everybody, to Wisconsin Weather Experts on Fox Local, as well as our Fox 6 YouTube page. Talked about a lot of severe weather in that last block, so this is the complete opposite type of story, but
yes,
this is in a good way.
Yeah, we're going to pivot to the ending of our snow season as we get into May, last day of April. It's not that we can't see snow in May, but we're pretty much done for the season. Chief Meteorologist Tom Walk says that.
Now that snow season has wrapped up, let's take a look back at this past winter and compare it to the last several seasons. So first of all, we averaged 48.7 inches of snow in a given winter in Milwaukee. So where did we stand this past winter? Well, over 18 inches below average, 30.3 inches of snow officially in Milwaukee. And as we look back over the last several seasons, you can see we were even a bit below where we were in 2023 and 2024. Then we were up a little bit in 2022 and 2023. But also here's what's interesting. I took a look back all the way to 2000, so 25 years worth of data. And in that 25-year time span, 2021 and 2022 was the lowest total in Milwaukee, the lowest seasonal total in that 25-year time span at 28.6 inches of snow. What came in at number 2? Well, that goes back to 2011 and 2012. And then number 3 was this past winter at 30.3 inches of snow. And in fourth place, 2023 and 2024. So in other words, most of the top 4 least amount of snowfall, seasonal snowfall in Milwaukee, occurred just within the last couple of years here, but it goes back and forth. Now, you go back to 2008, for example, and we had 99 inches of snow in Milwaukee. So it's certainly possible when all factors come together to get more snow. But again, 30.3 inches last winter, this past winter here, was the third lowest total in 25 years. Now, we've only had 8 years of above average snow going back to 2000. So only 8 of the last 25 years have been above average. But it's important to mention here, I'm just taking one snapshot, if you will. That's the official total at the Milwaukee airport. And as we all know, Sheboygan, West Bend, Kenosha, any other location, Waukesha, could end up with more, could end up with less, right? As we know, mile by mile, it can make a difference. Closer to the lake sometimes is higher than inland communities, or if a storm tracks in a certain way, you might get a big swath of snow in the Kettle Moraine and not much farther south, or something to that effect. So again, it can vary, but according to the official totals, yeah, we were well below average for this snow season.
All right, so now we can start, thinking about gardening. They always say Memorial Day is the day to, definitely start getting out in the garden. But snow season is over.
Right. Well, and it is worth mentioning, we even saw a little bit of frost in some inland spots this morning.
Right.
So.
To be clear, Tom was talking about the greater concept of the snow season.
Yes,
that does not mean it won't ever snow in May. It certainly could. We've never had anything in June yet. But again, we'll wait and see for sure. Certainly, given the trends that he was just pointing out there, it's unlikely to see that. Now let's go to Ohio. We talk about snow falling on the ground, and we're going to talk about what's happening under the ground.
Yeah, pretty crazy stuff here. Now, this was a small earthquake, but early yesterday morning, there was an earthquake in eastern Ohio. So the U.S. Geological Survey reported a 2.8 magnitude quake that struck about a mile south-southeast of Buffalo just after about 10 a.m. At a depth less than 1 mile. So again, not a huge one, but still, maybe don't think of
2.8 for that part of the country is just noticeable. I mean, that's not a California quake, but
not sure we talk about Ohio quakes too often, but residents in the Cambridge area actually reported feeling the ground move. Thankfully, though, so far there have been no reports of damage or injuries.
That's right. Now we have quite a few small fault lines even through parts of Illinois and Wisconsin, and once in a while we'll get these really, really light rumbles. Probably not even a 2.8, at least not in my time here. But speaking of much more notable fault lines, researchers are kind of sounding a new alarm here about an earthquake fault line off the northern California coast. So according to a new study, a big earthquake in the Cascadia subduction zone, subduction means it goes under, right? That could cause land along the coast to sink permanently, just sink. and increase long-term exposure to flooding. Researchers say if a quake happened today, it will likely cause a downward shift of anywhere from 6 inches to 6 feet.
Wow.
Imagine a downward sink of the shoreline by 6 feet. That would be along coastal regions between southern Washington and Humboldt Bay in California, if you're familiar with the coastline there. So that would then double the flood exposure in those areas. The fault is capable of what they call mega earthquakes, and that can cause tsunamis. There's about a 15% chance of a major quake there over the next 15 years, which seems like a low number, but 15% in a half century is a notable risk.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you think about it, say we use flood risk as a similar concept, right? 15% in 50 years. That, you shouldn't go about your everyday worrying about it, but in a lifetime, there's a definite risk that you could see that.
You already think of how many fault lines are already around that area and how many large earthquakes have already happened in California. So it would be interesting to speak with some Californians.
Well, maybe we'll dig deep and
how
see if
they
we can
feel
get
about
somebody
that. My
on the
goodness.
phone there. We have some former FOX6ers that live
We
out that
do,
way.
you're
Maybe we'll
right.
see if we can get them on the horn for sure. But we'll keep an eye on that story, as we always will. Anything happening here on planet Earth is like the domain for us to kind of send to you. There's our little corner of planet Earth looking beautiful out there in the sunshine, Milwaukee. We're back with more Wisconsin weather experts right after this.
Welcome back, everybody, to Wisconsin Weather Experts. We've talked about so much on this show so far, and now we are going to continue talking about the Milwaukee saga, boat saga. Well, I was trying to think of a funnier way to say it.
With that, yes, but
I know it's got a name of its own, but I was trying to think of something funnier.
We continue boat watch at this point. Yeah, Milwaukee's lakefront boat saga. Apparently, we've hit another snag out there. Now the Deep Thought, that's the boat
that's
there.
Its name.
Apparently
Love
has a bit of a roommate. To keep it company. The pontoon boat that was helping out with getting that thing out of there, that's now stuck on the beach too.
Oh no.
It's not funny, but it is kind of funny. One of its pontoons is busted off.
Yeah, so crews are working to remove the infamous Deep Thought, but they had to put their recovery on hold for now. They're waiting for good weather to resume work. And we've talked multiple times about how the wind is a huge factor, because then it, allows for big choppy waves and they can't really do the work that they need. And I know I've mentioned this before, but I mean, the strength of equipment they're going to need to get that stuff out of the sand, even the newly stuck pontoon.
Now, I mean, it probably, hindsight being 2020, we probably should have got on this a lot earlier.
Yes.
And got that thing out of there before. It's got an eye closed.
Super. I know. That's the first thing I know.
Of course it does. Oh my goodness. I mean,
gosh,
again,
so
not funny. This thing is a big mess, and it's so ugly
Yeah.
now, and it's becoming kind of a punchline because it just seems every time we try to fix it, we make it worse.
Right.
The weather will hopefully start to improve and the winds will come down, and we need the wind to shift direction. It's not terribly windy today, but when it's coming in off the lake like
Right.
that, it still creates waves that make it
Right.
very difficult. So we will, of course, keep on top of that, and we're going to take you to a happier boat story next.
Yes, this is exciting.
Yeah, it is really exciting. Some much better news along the lakefront. The Lake Express Ferry is, of course, preparing to launch the 2025 travel season. Daily service for the ferry will start this Friday at 6 a.m. To start, there will be a total of 4 daily crossings between Milwaukee and Muskegon, Michigan. Beautiful over in Muskegon, by the way. And if you're somehow watching in Muskegon, beautiful here too. So hop on the return trip
Come
and
on back.
visit us. But then late in June, it actually kind of bumped up. We get 6 crossings a day.
Okay.
I have not taken that ferry. It's definitely on my to-do list, but I have taken a similar short-lived fast ferry that went from Rochester, New York to Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and it was a fantastic experience.
I'm sure.
It was so much fun, and then there was an observation deck, which I'm assuming there is on this, and the speed these things are going at, the constant wind was just like being in some sort of hurricane wind tunnel, and then just the view. I mean, you forget how big those lakes are.
Yeah, and just gorgeous.
Horizon all the way around. All right, thank you so much for joining us on the show. We'll see you again for more Wisconsin Weather Experts tomorrow.